Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 308. We're doing our week 15 picks against the spread. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you and how's your week 14?
I'm doing great. Week 14 was pretty good. So I ended up going, I think, 5-2 on my best bets from the week. I went 8-8 overall because I did some stupid things like pick the Jets outright. I didn't bet on it, but I probably should have been better there. And then I changed one pick that ended up backfiring. I ended up being on the Panthers, and then they just didn't show up. And Drew Lock had the best game of his season. So I thought it was a pretty good 8-8 overall. Got a little bit lucky at the end of the Ravens game. I thought I was heading for another 7-8-1 week, and luckily, that last-second safety helped us pull out a cover there. So I was pretty elated about that after being on the wrong side of many of those in my time.
Yeah, I was telling you before we started recording that my dad bet on the Browns +3, and as soon as Justin Tucker hit that field goal, he called me and said, "Hey, the spread was 3, right?" I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Oh, it was a push," and then he's like, "Hey, have a good night," and so he hung up. So I assumed he changed the channel. I expected to hear from him after that crazy cover at the end, but he never called me, and I wonder if he knows that he lost. I'm suspecting that he doesn't. So I don't know when he's going to find out, but he's not going to be pretty happy about it. Anyway, I went 10-6 overall. 4-1 in the Super Contest. We also went 4-1 in our joint Super Contest entries. So pretty good week 14. So we have 3 weeks left. Hard to believe that the season's gone by this quickly. It's crunch time, and hopefully get some good picks going in week 15. So before we begin talking about these picks, please hit subscribe or the like button. Or send this video out to someone who likes football. That would mean a lot to us. Comment below as well. Like that, all this stuff would help us out a lot. If you want to support the show, you can definitely do that. So let's get going here. The first game is Chargers at the Raiders. This game opened up Raiders -3. It's up to 3.5. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I like the Chargers here. I don't know if I'm going to want to bet much on this one. I'll probably do a unit because it's a standalone game. But the motivation hypothetically favors the Raiders because they're still in the playoff race. But I kind of think these teams are pretty equal in terms of what they have. I think the Chargers had a really good they have a really good offense. They have pieces in place. I know they have some problems on the offensive line, and their defense hasn't been particularly good this year. And Anthony Lynn has made some very bad coaching errors, such as running the ball and letting the clock run out in the first half last week. That was pretty ridiculous. I have no idea what he was thinking at all. I still think that the Raiders, they have better coaching, but their offense is good, but their defense is bad. And they just fired their defensive coordinator for a short week. And I think they can probably do better than Paul Guenther at defensive coordinator. He was not good in his last year at Cincinnati, and the Raiders defense has never really developed into a solid stop unit like some people thought it could be. But even with him gone, I think that it's a tough turnaround to make on a short week to get a whole defensive game plan ready. I think that the Chargers should be able to take advantage of that because their offense is solid. I think Justin Herbert's going to bounce back against a weaker defense. I think that the Austin Eckler is going to run like crazy on these guys. I also think this could be the Chargers Super Bowl. They could effectively knock the Raiders out of playoff contention if they win here. There's also a chance that they may be a little bit flat coming off of a big last-second win against the Falcons, but I kind of don't think that'll happen because they're still not a very good team, so they're just trying to get as many wins as possible. And I think where this number's over 3, I'm going to be on the Chargers here because I could see them winning this game, and we're getting 3. So I'll probably be on them for 1 unit, not much more because I just don't trust Anthony Lynn, and usually the better coach tends to have an advantage on Thursday night if the teams are equal. So I'm a little apprehensive, but I think it could be a field goal game.
Yeah, you're even more confident than I am in this game, although we both have the same side. I think it's going to be a close game, and Anthony Lynn's probably going to find a way to lose it. I think that's what's going to happen. And I was so scared that he was going to find a way to lose that Atlanta game. Somehow the Chargers came through in the clutch, and it was kind of both teams excelled at losing, and they were trying to figure out which way to lose, and the Chargers came through at the end, which was nice. I think you made a good call saying this might be the Chargers Super Bowl, so maybe I'll have a little more confidence as the week progresses. I do think the Chargers are the right side. You brought up the Raiders firing Paul Guenther. I think it's a weird time to do it. Like, if you're going to do it, why not after this game? Because you're going to have more time to get ready. Instead, you have a new coaching staff trying to get ready for the Chargers, who have a good offense. So it's not like they have an easy matchup or anything. So I think this will probably be a field goal game. The first time these teams met, it came down to the wire. If you recall, the Chargers dropped 2 touchdowns in the final 6 seconds. It was a brutal loss. And in that game, the Chargers didn't have Chris Harris, they didn't have Joey Bosa, and they didn't have Austin Eckler. And they have all those guys back. So the Chargers are better this time. Granted, they're on the road, but with no fans in the stands, it doesn't really mean much. So yeah, I like the Chargers. I think this will be a 3-point game.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much dead on about the 3-point game. And I could see the Raiders just being demoralized too, because they just haven't played well the last 3 weeks. Like, they basically didn't lose to the Jets because Greg Williams sacrificed himself so the Jets could have a better shot at the top draft pick. So, I mean, hypothetically, they could be coming in this off 3 losses. And if they had lost to the Jets, I think this spread would be below 3. But people are projecting a bounce back because they're still in the playoff race. Yeah, I just don't see it. I switched sides on the Raiders a lot this year. I just think that their goose looks to be cooked to me.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you might be right that they might be demoralized, and plus there's some chaos with the coaching staff too. So it doesn't look good for them. But I like you. I think Lynn will find a way to lose somehow, and it's bound to happen. So we have 2 Saturday games this week. This is what I like to call the divorce package. As my wife laughs at that because we like to spend time together on Saturdays, but we can't because there are 2 games. Not that I'm complaining. I love football. So the first game is Bills at the Broncos. The line opened up Bills -4.5. It's up to 6.5. It's actually 7 in some books like BetUS. So there's a lot of money coming in on the Bills, and I think it looks like sharp action on the Bills. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, before I say that, I got to say the Saturday package this year is coming at a bad time because we also got the college championship games on Saturday. And I know that's a weird scheduling quirk. Like, that never happens, but I'm going to have to watch these games and the Notre Dame Clemson and the Alabama Florida games all at the same time. And it's going to be chaos. And I am slightly annoyed by that, but I won't complain. Like, who's going to complain about there being football on, really?
Well, you're not married, so you get to enjoy that without any repercussions.
That's a good point. Yeah, I don't have to worry about a divorce at this point. So I should be good on that front. Yeah, and this bit, I kind of waffled on this one a little bit. I think I'm going to be on the Bills here, though. I just don't want to bet against Josh Allen. I think the Broncos, they looked pretty good last week, and I think they showed that Vic Fangio is just a pretty good coach. It also showed that Drew Lock is just a very up and down passer and that he has a lot of talent and he can take advantage of weaker defenses. And we saw that against Carolina. And I think next year, Lock might be able to make the leap if the Broncos can stay healthy and have their receiving core. But I just don't think that he's going to do well against a good defensive coach like Sean McDermott. I think that they're going to have a plan in place to get a lot of pressure on Lock. I think that they're going to try to force him into turnovers and mistakes. And, once one of those happens for Drew Lock, it's kind of starts a little bit of a landslide. Like, he can just throw 4 picks in one game. And I think the Broncos should be able to run on the Bills, which is why at first I was kind of like, oh, maybe I'll take the Broncos in this one. But I think if the Bills come into the game and plan and say, hey, we really need to stop the run here. You saw what we did to Ben Roethlisberger when we rendered the Steelers one-dimensional. If we do that to the Broncos and make Drew Lock beat us, we should be able to do this. So I think the Bills should cover this. And where the sharps are going with them, I think I'm slightly confident in that pick. I don't know if I'm going to be confident enough to bet it, though. Maybe 1 unit on this. I'll check the injury report later because the Broncos have all sorts of injuries on defense and are without AJ Bouye, which is another big thing because their secondary won't be able to cover the Bills. So the Bills offense will produce. It's just a matter of, can Drew Lock do anything on the Bills defense? And right now I would lean towards no on that.
Yeah, I'd lean towards no as well. There's a big difference between playing against the Carolina defense and the Buffalo defense. And the Bills, they had a stretch where they were kind of struggling defensively, but I think that's done because they got Matt Milano back. He's such a good linebacker, and when he came back the first time from injury, he just wasn't healthy, and it was obvious. But now he's definitely healthy, and the Bills are stopping the run, and they have great corners to take away the receivers. And I think that Drew Lock just just being a young quarterback going against a good defensive coordinator, I think, or good defensive coach, I should say, and Sean McDermott is. I think that's a big advantage for the Bills. And I also think the Bills have another advantage. Like you mentioned, AJ Boye being out with the suspension. Bryce Callahan's out too because he's on injured reserve. So being down 2 cornerbacks against a great receiving core, I think that just benefits the Bills a lot. And I think I'm definitely on the Sharps with the Sharps here on the Bills. I wish we were still getting 4.5 because we crossed a key number of 6 and looks like we're going to a key number of 7. So yeah, I'm going to be on the Bills for 3 units if it stays to 6.5, and if it goes to 7, probably 2 units.
Yeah, you could probably convince me to go up to 2 units at 6.5. At 7, I'd probably keep it at 1. I think you're right. The Bryce Callahan absence is going to be huge too, and John Brown might come back off injured reserve, so Buffalo might have their top 4 receivers available. And Gabe Davis has done well with John Brown out, but if they're back, we could see some 4 receiver sets from Buffalo because they have a really, really talented group there.
Oh yeah, they're amazing. Speaking of receivers, someone Ramos Lynn and Jamil Thompson, they both mentioned that Ruggs is out for the Raiders. Does that affect your pick at all?
No, he hasn't done much at all this year. Like maybe he could have broken a long one against the Chargers defense, but I would think Nelson Aguilar is more important to the team than him at this point. Ruggs has kind of been a disappointment, which was why I kind of thought he was going to be the 3rd receiver taken instead of the 1st. He should develop, but he's been nothing but inconsistent so far.
Yeah, it's not like Darren Waller would be out. Like that would be a big deal. Like even though he's a tight end, he's their number one receiver. Like they spread it around so much outside of Waller that I don't think it really matters. Now, if they were down Ruggs and Aguilar and Renfro, then I'd be like, okay, the Chargers seem like a great play. But just being down Ruggs I don't think it's a big deal. The other Saturday game, Panthers at the Packers. This line opened up Packers -9. It's still 9. So who do you like in this game?
Well, I'm somewhat upset that the Packers didn't cover the 7.5 and missed by another half point. That's happened to me a bunch this year. I mean, it happens. It just shows that the lines are getting tight and correct. So I won't complain much about that. I'm going to be on the Panthers here at +9 for a couple units probably as a result. This goes into a theory that you talked about last week in how to predict backdoor covers, and I'll let you talk about that more because I'm assuming you're going to be on the same side as me here. But the Packers are the kings of allowing backdoor covers at this point because they have some injuries. And I think that for the Panthers side of things, they didn't do well against the Broncos. But we kind of wrote off DJ Moore not playing. And I know that they have a really good and deep receiving core and they don't have like a traditional number 1, but DJ Moore is treated like the number 1 receiver, I feel like, by defenses. So with him out against the Broncos, I think that impacted them a little. I mean, they still move the ball on offense, but they'll probably move it more efficiently with DJ Moore back. And I don't think the Packers defense is that great. They're not good against the run. So, not having Christian McCaffrey in this game, which seems likely at this point, according to Matt Rule, kind of hurts that a little bit. But Mike Davis should still be able to move the ball. I think Carolina's offense is going to keep them in this game. I think Green Bay's offense will win it. They may keep them at an arm's length, but as we saw with the Lions, I think there'll be a backdoor cover possibility. If this was at 7, I'd probably be on the Packers. But since it's at 9, if it was at 7, I'd be on the Packers. At 9, I'm on the Panthers.
Yeah, so my theory with the backdoor covers is that, once you start getting into key numbers like 6, 7, and then 10, it's hard for teams to cover large spreads if they have some things wrong with them. Like if they have multiple injuries at one position, or if they're looking ahead or something like that. And for the Packers, I think that's the case where they have 2 injuries on the offensive line. So their offense is like, while it still has some explosive plays, like they're not as efficient as they could be. Like it was a 14-14 game for a while, like in the 3rd quarter, I believe, against the Lions. If the Packers had most of their offensive line intact, like they would have scored more points against the Lions, and then the Lions wouldn't have been in position to get a backdoor cover. So I think the same thing's going to happen here. The Packers, like you said, they allow backdoor covers because they've had an injury. They've had an injured offensive line for most of the year. And then you have the Panthers who throw well and tend to come back. And, there's a reason why the Panthers, most of the games have been close this year. Like, remember, they almost won at New Orleans. They almost won at Kansas City. If that's the case, why can't they almost win at Green Bay? Like, I feel like this is going to come down to maybe like a last second 60-yard field goal again, like it's happened for Carolina a couple times so far. And then they'll miss, and then they'll lose by 3, and then you'll feel bad for Teddy Bridgewater. But yeah, I think the Panthers will cover the spread. It's just too large for a Packer team that has some issues.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, it's funny, too. Now I'm thinking back at recent Packers games. They also had like a front door cover against the Eagles with that ridiculous Aaron Jones run. So I feel like they could be worse against the spread than they could be better, too, because of the backdoor stuff. So it all balances out. But I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be super motivated because he sees a chance at the 1 seed and the MVP, too. Fingers crossed that he gets that because I have some money on that. But I have to ask other people what they think in the MVP race because I'm too biased. I'm like, it should be Rodgers. And I'm like, I'm biased. You see the Packers stuff behind me and getting money on it. So, yeah.
It's so close with him and Mahomes. I can't really differentiate right now. Like, I feel like it's going to be decided in the last 3 weeks. Like, one of them's going to have I don't want to say a bad game, but like a subpar game. And then the other one's going to have a great game that same week. And then I think it'll be decided then. So I don't know. Like right now, I'd say it's co-MVP. Like we had 1 year with Manning and I believe McNair. They won the same year. So we had a question before we move on. Do we believe that Drew Lock will be the quarterback of the Broncos next year? I personally think yes, because I don't see how they can replace him. Like they don't have a high enough pick to get either Lawrence or Fields. And like maybe if they fall in love with Trey Lance or something like that, like maybe they'll trade up for him or something. But I just don't see it. I still think they'll go with Drew Lock, and then they'll find a veteran to kind of challenge him. Maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think they'll bring in a veteran, but I think Drew Lock's going to be the starter. Simply put, he's struggled, but he's also shown signs, like against the Panthers last week. He showed that he could be a good quarterback. Maybe one more offseason of working on his craft will do him well. Maybe getting Cortland Sutton back and some other of the injured players will help him out. You just don't know. I tend to like his upside at this point, and if you're going to replace him with Trey Lance, then you're just like basically saying, all right, I got to wait another 2 years before I have my potential franchise quarterback, because I think Lance has a super high ceiling, but he's kind of Josh Allen-like, and that he'll need some time to develop. So I would stick with Locke one more year, maybe draft a mid-round guy if you're not confident, develop him and bring in a veteran. Then you have 3 quarterback options.
Yeah, it's not like he hasn't shown any positive signs. Like there have been flashes. There have also been terrible games. So I would give him year 3, and I'd make sure he has Cortland Sutton for at least most of the year before I make my decision. Ramos pointing out some other co-MVPs. So yeah, I mean, right now I would say co-MVP for sure. Although last year I would have said Mahomes and I think Drew Brees. I actually can't remember.
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. 2 years ago. Yeah. So anyway, all right, next game, Texans at the Colts. So we're moving into the Sunday slate. This line opened up Colts -7, and it's still 7 across the board. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Texans here. The Texans almost beat the Colts just a couple of weeks ago in Houston. Really, if not for an errant snap by Nick Martin to Deshaun Watson, Phillip Rivers would have had to mount a comeback. The game at most would have gone into overtime probably, and then we would have seen who won. And in that case, you'd be covering the spread pretty much no matter what. And I get that some stuff has changed with the Texans. They just got crushed by the Bears. They're out of playoff contention, so they might be a little demoralized at this point. But I actually tend to think that they played so poorly against the Bears that Deshaun Watson's going to be pissed off about that. He's going to come back and say to his team, like, hey, we almost beat the Colts a couple weeks ago. We can do it this time, and we can kind of spoil their playoff run, kind of the whole like, oh, this might be their Super Bowl type thing again. Because if the Colts lose, then they're, behind in the division and have to play a wild card game, and the Texans can take credit for doing that. So I think, while the Colts offense has been hot lately, their defense hasn't been as good. I think Deshaun Watson's going to be able to throw against them, even with Kiki Cutie and Chad Hansen as his number 2 and 3 receivers. And I just think that I think the Texans are going to cover here. I think the Colts could still easily win, but I just don't see why the Colts should be favored by 7. I know, again, their offense has been really good, but their defense has been relying on massive splash plays like big sacks, turnovers, defensive touchdowns to make an impact. And I think at some point, we saw it against the Titans the second time around. Their luck on defense ran out a bit. I could see that happening again here. So I'll take the points with the Texans here. I will point out if Jordan Akins drops another wide open touchdown, I will lose my mind because I actually played him in fantasy. And to quote my dad watching that play happen, he didn't see it live, but I sent it to him after. He said, I could have caught that. So if my 61-year-old father, sorry for mentioning your age, Dad, can catch a pass, Jordan Akins, you better be able to too.
I was played him on DraftKings, and then at the last second, I'm like, I remember those 2 drops on Thanksgiving, and I'm like, I'll be so tilted if he drops another pass. So I took him out. It didn't end up working out because I put in Duke Johnson at running back to kind of pair with Deshaun Watson. That lineup didn't do well because the Texans scored 7 points. I thought that, we talked about the Texans-Bears game obviously last week, and I thought that, I went with the Texans because I thought Deshaun Watson might want to outplay Mitchell Trubisky because of the what happened in the 2017 draft. But I also considered the fact that the Texans might be completely flat because of how they lost against the Colts the first time. Like, they had a chance to win. They still thought they could make the playoffs, even though that's probably not. But they still had a chance, if they ran the table. And they ended up just losing on that fumble on that errant snap. And then I remember Watson just sitting on the sideline with a towel on his head, just being completely dejected. And I was like, yeah, they might just be flat. Like, they were a complete no-show against the Bears. But teams rarely quit twice in a row. So I think the Texans are going to play a lot harder this week. For me, I think this line is fair. I don't see an edge with the line. But what I would say is, if the Colts are missing some players, then I'm definitely going to be on the Texans. The Colts lost a couple of guys late in the game last week. Darius Leonard went down in the fourth quarter. Xavier Rhodes got injured in the third quarter. Both those guys are just, if they're out, that's a big deal. And we don't know what's going to happen. I saw Frank Reich say that they're going to be okay. Does that mean they're going to be okay for the playoffs or okay for this week? He didn't really specify. So going to definitely pay attention to the injury report. So if those guys are out, I'm going to be betting the Texans. If those guys are in, I'll probably be 0 units on the Texans. Or actually it might be in the Colts because of all the injuries the Texans have. So not really sure what I'm going to do yet, but definitely going to monitor the injury report.
Yeah, those injuries are huge. The one to Xavier Rhodes especially, because he came up hurt on the sideline. Anytime someone's on the sideline, they get hit and their bodies all around, those always worry me. But if those two are out, that defense is going to look a lot different because it's basically going to be DeForest Buckner against the world. Not to diminish the other talent they have, but, if you're missing your 2 of your top 3 defensive players and they're in the back 7, your back 7's not going to hold up pretty well. So we'll see what happens there, but I'll probably be on the Texans either way. I just think that Deshaun Watson's going to come ready to play, and I think this could end up being like a last-second field goal game for the Colts.
Yeah, and this might be the Texans Super Bowl. Jamil Thompson saying the coach said they were optimistic to play this week. If I had a nickel for every time a coach was optimistic about a player playing, I'd have a lot of nickels. Saying that, like, you never know with these guys, especially like Pete Carroll. Like he's so famous for being like, yeah, he's definitely going to play, and then like he's out for like 4 more games. So you just never know how these guys, how their bodies are going to respond during the week. So that's why like paying attention to the injury report is so important. So definitely going to look forward to that later in the week. So speaking of injuries, we have Lions at the Titans. There's no line on this game because Matthew Stafford, he injured his ribs, and yet another injury for Matthew Stafford. It's like a billion injuries already, probably quite literally a billion. What do you think about in this game?
All right, so I have a very strange take on this. Well, I think Stafford isn't going to play. The risk he's dealing with sounds very painful, and they seem to be not optimistic that he will play. So usually, if they're not optimistic, that's a good sign that a player won't play. But I think if Stafford plays, I might be Titans, and if Chase Daniel is in, depending on the line, I might be on the Lions. That sounds like backwards logic, but my thought process is the line will probably get up to double digits if Chase Daniel's in the game. And I think the Lions will have a shot at covering at least. And I know the Titans defense has done well against the Jaguars last week, but they've largely struggled this year. They don't do well against the run. They don't do well against the pass. They've had some good performances. We saw them again last week against the Jaguars, a couple weeks ago against the Colts. They did a really good job. but they're so hit or miss that I could see them not showing up for this game. I believe the Titans are playing. Who are they playing the week after? They have a big game the week after this. I did not write down who. Packers, yeah. I don't know if there'll be any like specific rivalry look ahead to this, but if Matthew Stafford's out of this game, they might say like, oh, we can definitely handle the Lions with Chase Daniel, and then kind of start looking ahead a little bit to that. So I think that'll play an impact too. I do think the Titans are going to win this game no matter what, because the Lions have the worst run defense in the league. They've given up a league high 23 touchdowns to running backs, and Derrick Henry is running like a Mack truck right now, and he should just bulldoze them. So I am a little bit worried about that. The possibility of them just running crazy and Chase Daniel barely being on the field. But if this line gets up towards about maybe the 14-point range, where I think it might, or maybe 13 points, I probably would go with the Lions. If we're talking about something closer to the like 10 range, I'd probably be on the Titans, and anything in between there, I'd probably be a no bet, and I don't know what I would do, but I would lean on the Lions if there's Chase Daniel, because I think there's a chance for a backdoor cover.
Okay. I'm probably going to be in the Titans on no matter what. I think that the Lions, kind of like the Texans last week, might be a no-show. Just because that was the Super Bowl, right, against the Packers. Like, they put everything into that game. And not only did they want to unseat the Packers as like the potential number one seed, they still thought they had a chance at the playoffs. They were 5-7, and they were only one game back of the seventh spot in the playoffs. Now they're 2 games back. They lost to the Packers. They lost Matthew Stafford. It doesn't sound like he's going to play. I just could see them just being a complete no-show at all. Like, I could see them like thinking about their tropical island vacations in January and just be like, I don't want to play against the Titans. Like, this is not a rivalry game at all. They see this team once every 4 years. It's going to be, it might be cold in Tennessee. Like, they're going to be out of their dome. Like, I just don't see I just don't see them wanting to tackle Derrick Henry, really. And I think that I would say this, like, if this game doesn't get out of hand, like, there's a chance that Derrick Henry might end up getting 300 rushing yards in this game and like breaking the single game record. Like, I just don't. The Lions are horrible against the run, and they're not going to have motivation. Like, just seems like a recipe for disaster. So I'm going to be on the Titans no matter what. Just got to see what the number is.
Yeah, you make a good case, and I can't really argue anything against it other than I have just ridiculous faith in Chase Daniel. That's my only argument at this point. But I won't bet on the Lions if I do choose them, and I might change this later in the week. I could see a 4-touchdown game from Derrick Henry for sure, though. So if you're playing DFS this week, I know his price is like $9,600 on DraftKings, but he's in all of my lineups because the matchup is just too good, and that it's playoff time. They will just ride Derrick Henry as much as possible if it's going to get them the win.
Yeah, for sure. Like, earlier in the season, they were running with like Deontay Foreman and Jeremy McNichols, and I heard like people panicking. They're like, "Oh, you can't play Derrick Henry anymore because they're using these guys." And yeah, it's like they're preserving them. It's kind of like what the Packers do with Aaron Jones. I've noticed when they play bad teams, like Jamal Williams is like almost starting, and he gets like first drive carries. And like, if you have Jones in DraftKings or your like regular fantasy lineup, you're like panicking. You're like, what's going on? And it's just the Packers just preserving Jones until the playoffs, and then they're just going to ride Jones. So I think the same thing's going to happen this week. But with the Titans, like, they're actually playing for the divisional title right now. So I think like I said, I think Henry's going to go for at least 200, maybe 300, as crazy as that sounds. So the next game, Buccaneers at the Falcons. This line opened up Buccaneers -3.5 all the way up to 6. Tons of sharp action on the Buccaneers. So who do you like here?
Yeah, the fact that it opened up at 3.5 is insane to me. I'm with the sharps here because I looked at this and I said, wow, this seems wrong to me. I feel like the Buccaneers should be favored by more. And granted, that's me thinking about this as if Julio Jones is not playing. If Julio Jones is playing, I think this is probably a fairer line. But if you just look at how these teams match up, I think the Bucs are better than the Falcons. They can get pressure on Matt Ryan, which is the number one thing that has bothered him this year, especially without Julio Jones. And the Falcons have just had the wheels fall off every time Julio's out. I mean, they struggled last week to score on the Chargers defense, and the Chargers defense is not very good. So I just don't think that they're going to be able to move the ball on the Bucs if Julio doesn't play. And even if he does play, if he's not 100%, I could see Matt Ryan just being under pressure too much, or with hamstring injuries, especially Julio's, at any point it can just act up and he can have to leave the game. So I'm not confident in the Falcons offense. That's kind of what this boils down to. I think the Bucs have what it takes to render them completely one-dimensional because they'll stop the run, make Matt Ryan have to beat them either without Julio or under a ton of pressure. So I'm going to be on the Bucs for that reason. And I think on the other side of the ball, while the Falcons defense is improving, there's still holes in the secondary. And Tom Brady's going to be able to exploit those, especially with all of his weapons, except Ronald Jones, who has a broken pinky finger that he had surgery on today, healthy.
Yeah, the Falcons couldn't stop Tyron Johnson last week. So what are they going to do against the Tampa receivers? I think you're right in believing that the Sharps might know something that, Julio Jones is going to be out because of this line move. And I think that's what I'm reading from it too. Also, the Falcons were missing 2 offensive linemen last week, and Tampa has a great defensive line. So if they're down multiple linemen, Tampa is just going to dominate in the trenches. And, like Matt Ryan, he did not play well at all last week. Like he made some nice throws here and there, but he threw 3 interceptions. And if you watch that game, like he easily could have had 5 interceptions. Like it was ugly. This is a completely different team without Jones. So like, as long as Jones is out, I'm definitely going to be on Tampa. Now, if Jones makes a surprise recovery later in the week and he's like practicing fully, and we hear that like Caleb McGarry is going to come back, I'll probably take Atlanta because this line has gotten like pretty high. But if Jones is out and their offensive line is not healthy, this is going to be a decent bet on the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I think if that scenario unfolds as you just said, if Julio comes out on Friday and is practicing in full, and they get some offensive line blocking help back, then I'd have to reconsider. I'd probably stay on Tampa Bay, but I probably wouldn't bet much on it, just because I do not trust hamstring injuries ever, and especially Julio's this year has been especially bulk. I think he's over 30 now, so injury linger longer. So I also don't Falcons Julio Jones back. They're playing for nothing except draft position. So if hamstring is acting, it would be one to any incentives. Just say we'll give them to you. Come back next year. I know that happens a fair amount. Guys try to come back to get incentives, and then teams eventually just say we'll shut you down and give you the incentives at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think you're right. Although some coaches just seem gung-ho about playing their players. Like I saw Matt Rule saying, we're going to get Christian McCaffrey back late in the year. I'm like, yeah. These important last week wins are just going to be huge. Anyway, the next game is Patriots at the Dolphins. The line opened up Dolphins -2.5. It's still 2.5, although it's fallen to 2 at Bookmaker, which is a pretty sharp book. So it looks like they're getting some sharp money on New England, but it's a little too early to say. So who do you like in this game?
So I like the Patriots in this one. It's for the same reason that I liked them against the Chargers a couple weeks ago. They're playing rookie quarterback, and Bill Belichick outright is 20-5 against rookie quarterbacks with the Patriots. And usually you want the against the spread record is along with that, but since they're underdogs in this one, you don't need it. You just need to know, can they win the game? And the evidence is clearly yes. Now, there is another interesting trend here in that the Patriots are like 2-5, I think, in their last 7 games in Miami. They just don't play well down there. Now, I don't know if that's because they, go out on the town when they're around Miami or in South Beach. I have no idea. But it's been a consistent thing over the years. They've blown some late leads. There was the ridiculous play where they had Gronk on the field to guard against a potential Hail Mary, and I think Kenyon Drake scored. So there's all sorts of weird things happen when the Patriots are in Miami, especially on the football field. So we're going to see which trend wins out, but my money's on Bill Belichick having a game plan ready to take down Tua Tagovailoa, who's looked great as a rookie. But we saw him in his first start against a top-tier defense in the Rams. He really struggled. They only scored 14 offensive points. If not for a couple defensive touchdowns, the Rams might have been able to get into that game. So I think that if Belichick brings a good game plan and keeps Tua off balance for most of the game, I think that the Patriots should have a good chance to win this one. And Belichick's had extra time to prepare for this one too. Meanwhile, the Dolphins were very focused on beating the Chiefs, and they actually did a really good job in that game and came close. They got the cover, which was good for us. But they were within one possession of the Chiefs. But they've also lost a bunch of players in that game, like Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki went down, Jakeem Grant is week to week. They're down a few running backs. Miles Gaskin's not going to be back this week. So with all those unavailable, I just have a tough time imagining that Belichick's not going to find a way to slow down this Miami offense. And then on the other side of the ball, the Patriots offense, I don't know how they're going to move the ball on the Miami defense, but they'll figure something out. It's going to be like a 10-7 game. The Patriots might win it.
I actually think they're going to have a lot of success running the ball. Like the Dolphins haven't had a lot of luck stopping the run at all. And you have Kyle Van Noy and Landon Roberts injured. I don't know if they're going to come back this week, but if at least one of them is out, they're definitely going to be worse against the run than they already are. And we saw Denver beat Miami pretty soundly by just pounding Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay all afternoon. And I feel like the Patriots run. They run pretty well. Like they have a good offensive line. They have Cam Newton to be a threat in the backfield, and Damian Harris has looked good. You still have James White. Sony Michel is getting healthier. So I think the Patriots will run the ball pretty well and control the clock and win defensively. Maybe 10-7, maybe something like that. I think they'll definitely win and get the cover. So the Patriots are one of my top plays this week. And you made all the great points. And you talked about the rookie quarterback thing. Tua really struggled against Vic Fangio a few weeks ago, and Bill Belichick's an even better defensive coach than anyone else. So Belichick's going to have a great plan prepared for Tua. And you made the same points as Andrew and Ramos here. So Andrew said the Dolphins have no receivers and running backs. We saw Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki go down. Those are Tua's top two receivers. And Tua had that backdoor cover against the Chiefs, but there's a big difference between the Chiefs secondary and the Patriots secondary. So the Patriots, especially with Stephon Gilmore now completely healthy. And then Ramos said Belichick's had 3 more days to prepare. You mentioned that as well. Belichick with extra time to prepare, right? Any great coach with extra time to prepare is going to have a huge edge. I love the Patriots this week.
Yeah, I do too. I'll probably have I don't know how many units on them yet. I got 2 to 5 written down. So you can only base so much off the injury report for the Patriots because they'll always have 17 players questionable. But if the Dolphins are without that many players on offense, it's going to be so hard for Tua to move the ball. And I think this will be one of his first times having real growing pains. And he's overcome some challenges so far, and he's really improved as the year's gone along. But I will be interested to see him in this matchup for sure.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be rough for Tua. I wrote down 3 to 5 units, so definitely hoping to get a +3. I don't think it'll get there. You probably have to buy up. I don't think it'll get to +3, but we'll see. Next game, Seahawks at the Redskins. This line opened up Seahawks -5. It's up to 6. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I'm going to like the Seahawks here. Washington just beat the 49ers, and they've won 4 in a row. So they have some nice momentum, but they're doing it in a way that's pretty unsustainable, especially against really good, well-rounded teams like the Seahawks. Against the 49ers, 14 of their 23 points came on defense. So they didn't have any offensive touchdowns. They only had 9 points on that side of the ball. They still won because Chase Young and all the players on the defensive line and the back 7 are playing really, really, really well right now. It's going to be harder for them to do the same things they did against Nick Mullins, against Russell Wilson for obvious reasons. Wilson is much more mobile, and he has better and healthier receivers at his disposal. So I think even if you see them get some pressure and some sacks on Wilson, Wilson's still going to find ways to move the ball down the field. And Chris Carson will move the chains a little bit, I think. I know that Washington's really good against the run, but I think Carson will still be able to move it. And then you look at the offense for Washington. Alex Smith is banged up. We don't know if he's going to play. There's optimism that he will, but he's dealing with a calf strain in his injured calf. So, or on his injured leg, rather, the one that he had 17 surgeries on. So you best believe they're going to be extra cautious with him because of that. And if he can't play, it's Dwayne Haskins against the Seahawks defense. And I'd give the significant advantage to the Seahawks there because Haskins hasn't shown the ability to consistently move the ball downfield. I think that Seattle's going to start strong and just build a lead that Washington can't overcome with their offense. So I'm going to take the Seahawks -6 at this point, probably for a couple units. I just don't think that Washington's healthy enough on offense, because in addition to Smith, they may be without Antonio Gibson, and then Terry McLaurin was a little banged up against the 49ers too.
Yeah, how scared were you when Haskins came in, and then especially when he had that almost interception that barely hit the ground, and they had to overturn it. Like as soon as that happened, I'm like, oh my god, the Niners are going to win by 3. We're going to get a push, or like worst case scenario, they win by 6 in overtime. Like Haskins is just so bad, and I mean, I think he made Chase Young play even harder than he was already, because like Chase Young is like, I have to dominate this game because we're not going to score ever again. So it's just Haskins is just so brutal. We don't know Alex Smith's status yet. So we'll see what happens, but he was kind of like hobbling around, like maybe not like completely limping, but he was hobbling in and out of the locker room. So yeah, I mean, Seattle is just a team that's coming together right now. Like they lost to the Giants a couple weeks ago, but now they have their offensive line fully intact for the first time since week 5. And if Quentin Dunbar comes back, which he almost did last week, they're going to have their secondary intact for the first time since week 4. So they're definitely going to be a lot better than they were a few weeks ago when they were losing to the Giants and the Rams. So I like Seattle here. This line is not ideal that it's crossed or it's hit 6 up from 5. But I still like Seattle. And if you're wondering about the Seahawks playing an early game on the East Coast, Pete Carroll's got this figured out. He's 13-7 against the spread in early East Coast games. So no worries about that. I feel like Seattle should be able to win this one easily. Just want to see what happens with Alex Smith and whether he starts or not.
Yeah, and I think they obviously said they're optimistic about it, but like we said earlier, optimistic doesn't really matter about anything. They could use Jason Campbell right now. Russell Wilson could get sacked 7 times. I still think that he could do well, even if he does get sacked 7 times. So I'm not too worried about this. I feel like Washington's due for a loss. It's just an unsustainable way to play football. And, they win ugly, but that's kind of what they've done under Alex Smith when he's been healthy for this team. So props to them for being able to do that. And I think Alex Smith still doesn't get enough credit for what he does do, which is play mistake-free football.
Yeah, well, he either gets no credit or he gets too much credit, because I have someone in my comment section on my picks page saying Alex Smith's a great quarterback. He's like 10-4 in his last 14 starts. I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, I guess he's more than twice as good as Deshaun Watson, because the Texans have 4 wins this year. Like, come on. And then I said, like, Trent Dilfer was one of the top 54 quarterbacks of all time because he won a Super Bowl. Like, you can't really judge it on that. But Smith he's done a good job. Like, he's a great game manager. That's what he is. He's just so limited right now. And I think against elite teams, I just don't think he can win. I know he beat Pittsburgh, but the Steelers have a lot of problems right now. Anyway, next game, Bears at the Vikings. This line opened up Vikings -4.5. It's down to 3. So it looks like sharp money coming in on the Bears. Who do you like here?
I didn't go with the sharps in the Bears game last week, not making that mistake again. Weirdly enough, Mitchell Trubisky actually has looked good recently. And he's showing improvement this year, which, take that for what it's worth. It's not like he's playing elite or anything, but he's at least showing signs of being a competent quarterback. Maybe not a starter, but we'll see what he can do. The thing that I like about the Bears offense with Trubisky is that he's mobile. When they played the Vikings earlier in the year, Nick Foles was their quarterback. And, I think you and I both had the Vikings as underdogs on the road against Minnesota, or they might have been favorites. I can't remember. But it ended up being a 19-13 game where Chicago, I think, had like 108 yards of offense or something stupid like that. And their only touchdown came on a Cordero Patterson kick return. I think with Trubisky in there, he can at least run around and make the defense half work from side to side as the Foles just standing in the pocket like a statue, and them just being like, all right, just follow his eyes and we'll be fine. So I think Trubisky adds that element to this game for the Vikings. And I know the Vikings defense is better than that of the Texans, but I think that the Bears have the edge here. They just have a better defense that really contained Kirk Cousins last time they played. And with their offense playing better, I could see the Bears winning this outright. So we're getting 3 points on the Bears here. I like it, and I think that the Vikings are also going to be looking ahead a little bit, just because they have a game that said it was on Christmas Day, which I didn't believe at first. But apparently there's a game on Friday.
Yep.
There is. Okay. That wasn't me being crazy then. So they're on a short week too. So I don't think they're going to overlook the Bears because it's a divisional rivalry, but they have to play the Saints after that. And the Vikings are kind of crunching ways that they can make the playoffs. So they're going to be a little bit distracted by that Saints game, I think, because they know they have to win it to stay in the race probably. So I think that the Bears could come in here and make this really tough on the Vikings, could win and end their season. So I'm going to be on the Bears here.
Yeah, talk about divorce package games. The Christmas game. That's brutal. I don't know if my wife knows about that yet, but she's not going to be too happy. Anyway, yeah, I actually like the Vikings depending on one thing, and that would be Eric Kendricks. Like if he plays, I like the Vikings. If not, I like the Bears. Eric Kendricks is such an important player for the Vikings. Like as soon as he went out, he was declared out last week. I went from Tampa being like a 4 to 5 unit pick to being my pick of the month. Like that's how important he is. He's one of the best linebackers in the NFL. And with considering all the injuries the Vikings have had defensively, he's kind of like been the glue that's held everything together. And without him on the field, they're down 7 starters. And it's like, okay, yeah, Mitch Trubisky should be able to play well. So yeah, definitely going to be on the Bears if Kendricks is out. Now, if Kendricks is going to play, I actually like the Vikings because I think Trubisky is going to kind of ensnare bettors and then kind of make them regret betting him. Like he's kind of like that, like the Venus flytrap really of quarterbacks. Like he looks great sometimes just because of his talent level, but you kind of have to remember like he played really well against the Lions and the Texans, who were no-shows, the 2 of the worst defenses in the NFL. Now, like the Vikings don't have a great defense at all, but if Kendricks is there, like they're at least competent. And I think that Kendricks could intercept them, get a pick 6, something like that. And then, considering the injuries the Bears have in their offensive line, I think it could be problematic. So, it really depends on Kendricks' status. Like I really need to see that. I just don't know yet. We got a question. Is Trubisky getting paid this offseason? He's definitely going to be in the NFL. Like Blaine Gabbert's been a backup for how many years, even though he's been terrible. So yeah, he's going to be at least a backup somewhere. I don't see anyone bringing him in as a starter unless there's like an injury in training camp and then like someone's desperate or something.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to end up being kind of like a developmental project backup, like not quite in the Marcus Mariota neighborhood with the Raiders, but I think of that similar ilk, like some team with a shaky quarterback situation could bring him in, offer him backup money and say, hey, you can work with our coaches, develop a little bit, and we'll see where it takes you. I don't know what that team may be, but he's going to end up somewhere as a backup, and he could end up being a top backup because that mobility is a difference maker. Because, I mean, if he can at least throw solid enough and he can move around, it'll keep defenses off balance.
Yeah, he's too young and too talented for teams to give up on him. Like one of the 32 teams or other 31 teams will give him a chance somewhere, and he's going to be someone's going to develop him. The thing with him is just mental. Like he just doesn't see the field well. He can't read defenses, and maybe that's something that can't be developed. But like some quarterbacks have gotten better in that regard. So I wouldn't completely give up on him, but I still think he's a long shot to be a good quarterback in the future. Anyway, Jaguars at the Ravens is next. The Ravens open up -14. It's still 14. So who do you like here?
I like the Jaguars for 2 to 4 units in this one. And there are a few reasons. One, Gardner Minshew is back. He's starting. Evidently, the Mike Glennon gravy train ran out last week. So Doug Marrone decided to go back to Minshew, who played well earlier in the season at times. Then he kind of struggled a little bit and then hurt his thumb. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him back and if he was impacted by the I don't hate Minnesota. I just want to say I read that comment. I don't hate Minnesota. I just am going against them because the Bears. I guess I have maybe anti-Kirk Cousins bias because I covered him in Washington. But yeah, anyway, that I don't hate Minnesota.
I never got the vibe that you hated Minnesota. That was a surprising comment.
Yeah, if I get it again, maybe I'll go back and start like becoming a Minnesota hater. I probably won't though. That sounds like too much work. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I'm going anyway. Back to this one, Jaguars. So they're getting Minshew back, and then on the Ravens side of the ball, they're coming off a short week, big win over the Browns to stay in the playoffs. But they expended a ton of energy and suffered some key injuries in that game. They lost a couple defensive backs, Jimmy Smith and not Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters in that game. So they had to use Devontae Harris, who was abused in coverage by the Browns late in the game. They basically drove down the field throwing exclusively at him for a good chunk of it. So if neither of those players can come back, then the Jaguars receivers are going to be able to move the ball against the Ravens and at least keep this close because Minshew doesn't turn the ball over. That's one thing he's pretty good at. He avoids interceptions. So with this being a 2-touchdown spread, I think that I would favor the Jaguars getting the cover here. And no, I don't think they'll beat them. I think Ravens are going to have a great game. Lamar Jackson's going to run like crazy, and they'll definitely win, but it might not be by 14. It could be 10 points. And, if depending on the point in the game we're at, Jacksonville could be down 14, drive for a last-second touchdown to cut the lead in half. So I think the chances of a backdoor cover are high here. So I'll be on the Jaguars for 2 to 4 units. I just think it makes sense.
Yeah, I have that same exact unit count. It really depends on the Raven cornerback situations. Like if they have multiple missing cornerbacks, I think that gives the Jaguars a good edge with their receivers. Like they have talented receivers. And Minshew, like you said, he's not going to make mistakes, and he's going to move the ball, and he's going to be in position to score. The Jaguars were so close to getting the backdoor cover against the Titans last week, even though it was a 31-10 game. The Jaguars were in the red zone twice in the fourth quarter, and if they just converted the touchdowns, it would have been 31-24, and they would have covered by half a point. And Minshew only had he didn't even have half the game. He only had half the game to do that. Like Glennon was so bad. So yeah, I have more faith in Minshew with the Jaguars, and like you said, the Ravens are going to be so exhausted after that Monday game. Not only just an emotional win, but on a short week, it's going to be pretty brutal. It's going to be tough for them to come back, and I just don't really see them focusing against the Jaguars. Like why would they even try that hard against a 1-12 team after such a big win like that? But the Jaguars have kept games close. I mean, they've lost by more than 10 just twice since week 6. And that was the one game was last week, which is almost a cover. And then the other one was against the Steelers with Jake Luton starting. So I feel like that, the Jaguars should probably keep this game close again. This line's very high. The advanced spread on this game was Ravens -11, and it's moved 3 points based on what happened in the Monday night game. And I don't think that's correct. I think 14 is not like a key number, but still moving at 3 points, I think is too much. So I definitely like the Jaguars. I think this is probably going to be like a 7 to 10 point game.
Yeah, that line move doesn't make much sense to me. Like they scored a ton of points, obviously, but they did it on the Browns defense, and it was in a back and forth shootout. Like it's not like they came in and crushed the Browns. They ended up winning by 5 points, but it was pretty much a 3-point game at the end. So, I mean, the Browns also don't have that great of a defense outside of their defensive line. Granted, it's better than the Jaguars, but, I think the Jaguars offense is better than people give it credit for too. So I'm glad we're on the same side in this one because I was like, do I really want to pick the Jaguars? But yeah, this number's too high.
Yeah, I agree. It didn't really make much sense for the line move 3 points. It was a fun game to watch for sure. But I don't think it was an impressive win because they couldn't stop Baker Mayfield at all. And I agree. Like part of that was the cornerbacks getting injured, but still they allowed 42 points to the Browns. Like it shouldn't happen. The Baltimore defense is not the same. And remember the week before, like Dallas was moving the ball pretty well. They just missed some field goals and they kind of sputtered in the red zone. And maybe that happens again. Maybe the Jaguars screw up in the red zone and they've had kicking issues. And, maybe the Ravens won by 20, but I think there's a better chance that the Jaguars cover. Yeah. All right. Last of the early games. So this is flexed out of Sunday night. 49ers at the Cowboys. The Cowboys were 1-point favorites to open. Now the 49ers are favored by 3. So who do you like in this game?
I do like the 49ers. That line moves a little. That's a lot to me, but especially where the Cowboys were favored. But I think that's probably more people discounting their win over the Bengals as they're the Bengals and not that great. Because I looked at this and thought that the line was just about right. I do like the 49ers here. I just think it's a good matchup for them. The Cowboys defense is bad, and they're especially bad against the run. They've given up the second most rushing yards to running backs this year. So the 49ers are going to be able to run all over them. Whether or not Raheem Mostert plays, we don't know about him right now because he had an ankle MRI. either today or yesterday. So he's questionable, but even if he doesn't play, I like Jeff Wilson Jr. He played really well against the Patriots earlier in the year, should be able to exploit this run defense. And then they have Jerick McKinnon and Tevin Coleman. So they have plenty of depth there that can run on Dallas. And so long as Nick Mullins doesn't make any crushing mistakes, turn the ball over, or just really give the Cowboys good field position, I think that the 49ers are going to be able to move the ball consistently, score some points, and then their defense is good, and they should be able to slow down Andy Dalton and the Cowboys offense. We saw them bottle up the Washington offense entirely, and granted, Washington's offense is worse than Dallas when everyone's fully healthy. But I still think that the 49ers are the right side here, especially since Andy Dalton's coming off a strong outing in a revenge game, and he might come out for this one flat because the Cowboys don't really have playoff chances. They're technically mathematically alive, but they need a lot to go right because I believe there are like 526 different possible winning combinations for the last 3 games in the NFC East. And the Cowboys only win the division in 8 of the 500 and some odd or 256 combinations. So very low chances.
I'm glad to hear that because I had the Cowboys not to make the playoffs at like plus 340. I remember texting you about that when I was in Vegas, and I was eating pizza at Evil Pie, which is I think is like one of the best pizzerias I've ever been to. It's actually a bar, but they have great pizza. And I was looking at the lines, and it said Cowboys not to make the playoffs plus 340. I'm like, am I missing something? Like, what is going on here? Like, is it minus 340? Like, was that the correct number? So I ended up betting that pretty. I have a big bet on that, so I'm going to be happy if that happens. If they don't make the playoffs, I know they're still alive, like you said. Yeah, I like the Niners too. This is a sharp movement on the Niners. I think people, like you said, kind of reading too much into that Cincinnati win. Like, not only are the Bengals terrible, but the Cowboys got 3 fumble recoveries on the first 3 drives. Like how often is that going to happen? Like if that doesn't happen, I think that's probably like a 13-10 game or something like that. I think the Cowboys got very lucky, and I think the people forget how bad they are. They got blown out by the Redskins on Thanksgiving. Like, that's how bad they are. I just don't see them competing with the Niners. I know the Niners have looked bad recently, but you kind of have to remember that they played the Redskins, who have a great defense, and they've played some other good teams recently. Most notably last week, the week before that, they played the Bills, and people thought that game was going to be close. And Buffalo won by more than they quote unquote should have. The Bills, they clobbered the Steelers the next week too. So I think people kind of forget that the 49ers are pretty decent. Like, they beat the Rams a few weeks ago. They destroyed the Patriots in New England. Although, obviously Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle were available in that game, but still the Niners still have some good players. Like, they have the cornerbacks to shut down the Dallas receivers, and they should be able to run the ball even if it's Jeff Wilson Jr., like you said. So, I'm going to be with the Sharps here. I'm going to be on the Niners. Kind of upset that we lost our line value, but I still think they should be able to win by more than a field goal in Dallas.
Yeah, I think that it's a classic example of, we lost our line value, but the line's probably more correct now than it was before. Like, this isn't like, oh, wow, we're going the opposite direction because this is far too. Yeah, I am Dr. Strange today. I love math, man. It's just what I do in my spare time. But yeah, gotta love the 49ers in this one.
You guys kind of lost me in that one. I've never seen the Avengers, so
I've seen half of them, but I'll explain later. It's too complex.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. So moving on to the late slate, there are only 3 games in the late afternoon, unlike 6 last week. So would like some consistency here, but whatever. The first game is Jets at the Rams. Rams open up minus 16.5. It's up to 17. Something very odd about this game that I want to mention very quickly. It has nothing to do with the result of this game, but when I was looking ahead to the advanced lines, as I like to do, this game was not on the board last week for some reason. I don't know if they planned on not playing it for some reason, but it was not on the board anywhere. I don't know why. But anyway, who do you like in this game?
I like the Rams in this one a lot. I will no longer be betting on the Jets. Not that I did last week, but I picked them and I fell for the stupidity again. So, and as Andrew points out, we have repeatedly lost against the the Rams, including last week. So I'm not going to fall for those tricks again, knowing my luck, it'll burn me. But it's pretty simple. Sean McVay has extra time to prepare for this game, an elite defense, and he's playing the winless Jets. I can't imagine a scenario in which the Jets win this game. I can't imagine a scenario where the Rams don't win this by at least double digits, and they should blow out the Jets because the Rams are in a very competitive playoff race, and this is like the game that they have where they can win this one and not have to worry about it. And now I know there is some look ahead potential. I think they're playing the Seahawks the week after this. So they, I think that's the case. I can't remember. Okay. I always forget to write that down, and I don't know why. But yeah, so there's a little look ahead potential, but I think that because the Seahawks and Rams are already so close in the standings, the Rams are going to look at this and say, hey, if the Seahawks struggle with Washington, like we've seen other teams do, maybe if we beat the Jets, we have a 2-game lead on them and that game doesn't matter. So they'll just come out here and completely crush the Jets. So I'll be on the Rams here. Not going to bet this one heavily because the number is massive, but I'll probably be on them for a unit.
Even if they look past the Jets, I still think they can win by more than 17. So I don't know how much like that factors into it, but like I agree. I think this is going to be a blowout. I don't see the Jets scoring on the Rams, especially now that they have 2 offensive line injuries. Greg Van Roten's out along with Alex Lewis. So you have 2 interior linemen out against Aaron Donald. So good luck blocking the Rams. The Jets aren't going to score. Maybe they get 3 like they did last week. So I really can't see any more than that. And the Jets have so many defensive injuries. They're missing cornerbacks, multiple safeties, multiple linebackers. Jordan Jenkins is out last week, so we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, they have so many injuries everywhere. I just can't see them competing. And then you mentioned Sean McVay coming off extra rest. That's a big deal. So yeah, I'm going to be on the Rams with you. This line is so high, like when you have 17, like weird things can happen, like a fumble return for a touchdown. And then suddenly the Rams have to win by 24 if you factor in that fumble return for a touchdown. So I'm not going to bet this heavily, but I will bet the Rams for a couple units.
Yeah, it just makes sense. And I can guarantee I will not be betting on the Jets for the rest of the year because even though their offense looks okay to me, like Andrew mentioned, they were in the red zone a lot. I don't trust their coaching at all. And I think that, when they play elite opponents, there's no contest. Like, just don't bet the Jets. Don't waste your money. Don't even waste your headspace betting the Jets and then being upset when you're wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the Jets have they had a stretch where they're recovering, but they were playing the Chargers, who aren't very good, and they're playing the Raiders, who have been exposed, and they're playing the Patriots, who didn't have Stephon Gilmore. So yeah, they were playing weaker opponents, and now the Seahawks and the Rams are 2 of the better teams in the NFL, obviously. So it's going to be tougher for them. And what Andrew's saying, they missed 3 field goals, the Jets did. So like they should have had 12 points, I guess. But yeah, they always seem to like move the chains up until they get to the 30, and then like they just stall. Like it always just happens. But now they're playing the best defense in the NFL, arguably. So I don't even know if they're going to get there. Like it wouldn't surprise me at all if they don't cross midfield until the 4th quarter. Really. Something else Andrew brought up. He said y'all keep betting against McVay / Brandon Staley and losing. Would y'all bet against Belichick if he had Goff, Donald, and Ramsey? Well, I don't know if you could say Goff because the reason I'm betting against the Rams is because of Goff. Like I just have no faith in him. I love McVay, and Staley's done a good job so far. So we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a good point, saying like McVay just really elevates the team, and like maybe I shouldn't really worry about Goff too much. But like, man, I just don't like Goff at all.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I also wouldn't quite compare Sean McVay to Bill Belichick yet. He's very good, don't get me wrong, but I'm also from New England, so I'm always going to say that. Like, you could have the next greatest coach ever, like, win 300 consecutive games and be like, oh, that guy's no Bill Belichick. So
no, yeah, I agree. Would you put McVay in the top 5 coaches, though?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I would too. Like, he's definitely in the top 5. But yeah, you can't compare anyone to Belichick. Now, if McVay coaches for 20 more years and wins 6 Super Bowls, then maybe you could say that. But we'll see. He needs to do that. He needs to do that first. All right, next game, Eagles at the Cardinals. This line went up Cardinals -5.5. It's up to 6.5. Looks like sharp action on Arizona. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Cardinals in this one. I think it's going to be tough for Jalen Hurts to go on the road against the Cardinals. I think he caught the Saints a little bit off guard, and he looked great in his first start. He was much better than I anticipated. I thought he was just going to run a lot because his receivers wouldn't be able to get open much, but he threw them open on occasion, which was very good and reminiscent of what he did on occasion at Oklahoma. So I think that he obviously showed some upside and showed that he should be starting over Carson Wentz at this point. Even though that whole situation is just a mess now in Philly. But I think that part of that game was the Saints looking ahead to the Chiefs, so you have to take that into account. And I think that the Cardinals are looking better now that Kyler Murray is healthy. And where the Eagles are traveling on the road, I think that the Cardinals are going to be able to catch them, take advantage of yet another offensive line injury where Auburn tackle or former Auburn and UMass tackle Jack Driscoll is now out for the Eagles. So they are down yet another offensive lineman. So I have no idea what they're going to do there. Hassan Reddick just had 5 sacks of Daniel Jones. I don't think he'll do that against Jalen Hurts because I think he has good pocket presence, but he'll still be under heat. He'll make some mistakes. And I think Arizona can win this by a touchdown or more. I just think that their offense will move the ball on the Eagles, and then their defense will do enough to throw Hurts off his game.
Yeah. So something Andrew said, he's Jalen Hurts is kind of a poor version of Kyler Murray, poor man's version. And so Arizona is going to have, they're going to know how to defend him better from practice. I think that's definitely a thing. They're also going to have game film on Hurts, which is something the Saints didn't have. And yeah, I think the Saints are looking ahead to the Chiefs. I really don't think they tried hard at all. I think they just assumed they were going to win. And they showed up flat with zero game film on the opposing quarterback. So of course the Eagles won. I thought there was a good chance they'd cover, even though I picked the Saints. But yeah, the Eagles did a good job and they won. Hurts, he made very quick decisions. That's something I noticed. Actually, Kenny texted me. He said the same thing, and I actually bought Kenny a Jalen Hurts jersey already, so it's on his way. I think that Hurts is the right starter. We had a question like if Hurts is going to start next year. I think he will at this point. But yeah, I don't see him succeeding in Arizona. I think he's going to take a step backward, especially with all the offensive line injuries. Driscoll going down is huge because he's played well in relief. Now he's out. I just don't see the Eagles blocking well at all. They'll have some decent drives because Hurts can run around. But I think Kyler Murray being healthy is a huge deal. He's finally scrambling, and that just means he's dangerous again. And I think Arizona is going to win by more than a touchdown, like you said. Arizona, by the way, against the other 3 NFC teams, they've beaten them by a combined score of 94-32. So they have a good track record against this terrible division.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good way to put it. I think addressing the who starts next year for the Eagles question, I think that yes, we're going to see Jalen Hurts probably be the favorite to start next year, but I think he'll compete with Carson Wentz, and they're not going to cut Wentz because the cost of doing that would be astronomical, and it would not be worth letting him sign on somewhere else and become a potentially good starter again. The Eagles are kind of just in salary cap hell with Wentz. Unless they can somehow trade him for an asset, cutting him just puts a massive amount of dead money on their books. And even trading him puts some dead money on their books. So they're going to have to keep him around. I think he'll probably compete with Jalen Hurts, just kind of push the young guy. And, who knows? If the offensive line comes back fully healthy, Carson Wentz is confident in playing well again, he probably starts over Jalen Hurts. Will that happen? That I don't know. And if Hurts looks really good these next 3 games, it's going to be a big uphill battle for Wentz to regain that job. But I think those are going to be the 2 guys next year at the very least.
Yeah, I'm very curious to I actually wonder if we're going to find out anything about Wentz this year. He was an MVP candidate in 2017, legitimately. And even last year he got them to the playoffs, even though they were missing everyone. And this year he's gotten so much worse. He can't see the field. He's just not making all the throws. I wonder if he's either injured and doesn't really want to play because he's so hurt, kind of like Andrew Luck, how Luck retired because he was just too injured, or if he's kind of fell out of love with football because there might be something personal, there's something very serious off the field. I wonder if either of those two things will come to light in the offseason, and then we'll see Wentz play better next year, because this doesn't really make any sense. Like, Wentz has played so much better before this year. So I wonder if that's going to happen. And yeah, just because he's benched doesn't mean he's done. Like, Drew Brees got benched in 2003, and then 2004 he came back and was a Pro Bowler. So I wouldn't give up on Wentz, but like you said, the Eagles can't cut him. Like, they're just stuck with him. They can't even trade him, really.
Yeah, like, there is an outside chance they could salary dump trade him if they really wanted to, but even that doesn't look like it's going to be possible until 2022.
Yeah. So I think that I just, like you said, it would have to be like a Brock Osweiler situation. But yeah, it's going to be tough for a team to take him on, really, especially if they don't know if he's injured, So Pat saying, I have nothing against your game analysis, but if you were to tease your picks with a few points, you would certainly make hundreds, if not thousands more this year. No, there's a reason they call it teasers. Like, they all look good and then they lose. And that's how the books make their money. As I always say, like, if you're going to do a teaser, you have to go through 3, 6, and 7. And even that, it doesn't, it's decent odds, but not great odds. Like, teasers are not a good idea at all. Anyway, last of the late afternoon games, the Chiefs at the Saints. This line opened up Chiefs -3.5. It's down to 3 because of sharp action on New Orleans. Who do you like in this game?
I'm annoyed that it's down to 3 because I'm on the Saints. I'm still on the Saints. Don't get me wrong. But I would have loved to have that little hook there. Just as a point, this is the same number that the Chiefs were favored by against the Bucs earlier in the year, and they didn't cover that because Tom Brady had a backdoor cover in that one. So if we could have seen it was the same number. This is why I can't deal with the line changing by that half point. But so they backdoor covered against the Bucs on 3.5. That doesn't matter anymore because it's down to 3. But I think what you're seeing is people are overreacting a little bit to the Saints losing to Jalen Hurts and the Eagles because it was so unexpected. But as we've already talked about, they were probably looking ahead to this game, and now there's going to be a greater sense of urgency for them in this because they're now tied with the Packers, I believe, for the 1 seed, and the Packers are owning the tiebreaker right now. So if New Orleans wants a chance at a home playoff game, they have to beat the Chiefs here. Like, this is a huge, huge game for them, potential Super Bowl preview. And they'll have to do it, I think, with Taysom Hill because it does not sound like Drew Brees is going to be back and healthy at this point. And Hill wasn't good against the Eagles. He took too many sacks. He had some bad throws. But the previous 3 games, he did just fine. So I think people are kind of like overreacting to a bad performance from a backup quarterback when it's just his 4th NFL start. So got to cut him a little bit of slack. And I think the Chiefs are going to be able to move the ball, but we saw the Dolphins successfully slow them down on occasion. And granted, they had to get 3 interceptions of Patrick Mahomes to stop him in the red zone a few times. But the Saints defense is good enough to slow down the Chiefs offense and let their own offense keep them in the game because the Chiefs defense can be beaten. And I think the Saints have plenty of weapons to do that. And the Saints are at home here. I know that doesn't matter as much with no fans, but I still think that if they're a 3-point underdog at home, I'm going to be all over them. So I like the Saints in this one for 2 to 4 units. I think they have a good chance to win this one outright. As you usually say, the most likely result of this game is probably a field goal game. So if we're getting the 3, I'll take the points and I'll either win or push. So I'm on the Saints here.
Yeah, I don't like. I'm kind of upset about this line move, like you are. I wish it was Saints plus 3.5 still, and I'm not surprised at all that the Sharps are on the Saints. The Chiefs have barely beaten bad teams recently. Like they almost lost to the Panthers. Denver had a chance to get the win with the final drive against them. And then the Raiders, in that crazy Sunday night game, the Raiders almost beat them. So those 3 teams are far worse than the Saints, even without Drew Brees. So I think there's a good chance the Saints keep this close, and I think it's going to be a field goal game either way. So definitely going to be on the Saints. Do you remember the last time the Chiefs have won by more than 6 points?
I do not, but I think it was maybe week 7, I want to say.
Oh, you're so close. It was week 8. It was against the Jets. So that doesn't even count really. And something that's wrong with the Chiefs is that they're missing 2 offensive linemen. Now maybe Mitchell Schwartz returns. I think he's getting close to returning. So if he does, I think I would consider going with the Chiefs at -3. But if he's out again, I think the Saints should dominate in the trenches and make things difficult for Mahomes. And then Mahomes has like a last-second touchdown drive to win the game, and he wins by 1 to 3 points, and then hopefully it's 1 or 2 because we have the Saints +3. So yeah, they're going to be on the Saints. I don't know if I'm going to bet this game, but I do like the +3. Wish it was +3.5.
Yeah, if it was +3.5, I'd feel a lot better about this. But I think this game matters more for the Saints. And yeah, no one's slowing down the Chiefs. I mean, in comparison to the Chiefs, if you can hold them to 27 points, the Saints can score enough to keep within 3. And we've seen that happen a few times this year. So yeah, I'm gonna be on the Saints here unless something changes or this line drops considerably. But this game means a ton to the Saints.
Yeah, for sure. Question, why don't I do more over-under picks or game props? I'm terrible with over-unders. I don't find them interesting either. Like, it's just so boring. I always forget which total I take. Like, I don't remember it until I go over my picks. And then game props, maybe I should do that more, but I'm not like even during the Super Bowl, I look through them and it's all like a blur. I really don't know. Like, I'd rather just pick the sides. So anyway, Sunday night football, this game was flexed in the Browns at the Giants. This line opened up 4. It's still 4. It just opened recently. So who do you like in this game?
Well, thank God we don't have to watch the 49ers and Cowboys in prime time. So I'm a little bit torn on this one. Like, I think the Browns being favored by 4 is a little bit much. But I also don't want to bet Daniel Jones because he didn't look healthy last week. And when he's not healthy, he still makes constant negative plays and turns the ball over. At least he has this year. So I'm going to be on the Browns here. I think Myles Garrett's going to pressure Daniel Jones, force him into some mistakes. And Baker Mayfield's playing really well right now. I think he's going up against a solid defense. So this will be a good test for him to see if he can continue to play well. But as Andrew mentioned, there's also the possibility of down because they just, played their hearts out against the Ravens and were beat on a last-second field goal. So there's a possibility for numerous things happening in this game. So I'm not going to bet it. I'm leaning on the Browns here. I don't know. I wrote that if this line goes up to 4 or 5, I may flop back to the Giants. I am very torn on this one. So I will let you take it from here and see if you can change my mind.
I feel like I have the same sentiment about this game that you do. Like, I kind of like the Browns, but not really. Like my biggest thing about this game is Daniel Jones's hamstring injury. If he were healthy, I think I'd be on the Giants, just because the letdown factor. Plus the Browns, do they deserve to be favored by 4 on the road against a competent team? Like, I really don't think so. We just saw them play a thriller against the Ravens. But this is a team that just barely beat the Eagles a few weeks ago. They lost to the Raiders before that. I think the Browns are overrated right now. If they still had Odell Beckham and their cornerbacks, then I would think differently. But they're down their top 2 cornerbacks, and the Giants have good receivers. So if Daniel Jones were healthy, he could connect with them, and then the Giants would be able to keep this game close, maybe win it outright. But if Jones is bothered by this hamstring and he's committing more turnovers than usual, I just feel like the Browns might be able to score a defensive touchdown and kind of put this game away. Even if they're flat. Like, I think that's a big thing too. Like, they could just be deflated from losing the game to the Ravens. I'm going to be looking at the practice reports. If Daniel Jones is practicing fully and there's no concern with this hamstring anymore, then I'll consider going with the Giants. But if Jones is Jones is either missing practice or is limited, then I'm probably going to stick with the Browns.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. If Jones is full as of Wednesday, I'll probably switch sides and be a lot more confident. Now, I have to ask you this question that's kind of off topic, but who do you think wins Coach of the Year at this point? I bring this up because Kevin Stefanski has been a name that's come up a lot, but we haven't seen a non-division winner win Coach of the Year in quite a while. I think it's been at least 10 years.
I think Stefanski is definitely a candidate. I don't think he's going to do it though. If he beat the Ravens, I think that I think he would get it, but like losing to Baltimore twice, I would say no. So right now, I would say I would say like a two, like a. It's like I'm leaning toward either Sean McDermott with the Bills because like the Bills winning the division against the Patriots is a huge deal. Also Matt LaFleur for the Packers. So like I think I'm leaning toward LaFleur. If they get the number 1 seed, I think LaFleur. But McDermott, I think, deserves consideration too. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I was thinking Matt LaFleur was my number 1 guy because if they get the number 1 seed, then it just makes sense because he has changed things around there. And we see how bad McCarthy's doing in Dallas. And you just look at the last 2 years under LaFleur and, it's not always, it's obviously rewarded for 1 year, but sometimes they do look back at other bodies of work. So I would go with LaFleur right now. And I think this isn't going to happen, but if the Dolphins had somehow won the NFC or AFC East, it absolutely would have been Brian Flores, and he's probably going to get one at some point in the future. But he was another name I'm keeping an eye on. But I think the wild card teams won't quite get it because they'll have just the whole too many losses part of the argument.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Flores has done a great job for the Dolphins for sure. And like Andrew said, Tomlin fell off. Like Tomlin was the leading candidate, and not so much anymore. The Steelers just aren't playing that well right now. And let's speaking of the Steelers, they're at the Bengals this week, and the line opened up Steelers -13. It's still 13. So who do you like in this game?
So I do like the Steelers. I probably am on them for like 1 unit because this line's so big. I think they should be able to cover it. This just feels like a get-right game to me. Like the Bengals are so bad. They have so many issues. And their offense, like, yeah, they have some good receivers, but you have Brandon Allen and then a triage of, young veteran running backs and then Giovanni Bernard trying to run the ball on this defense. It's not going to happen. So I don't think the Bengals are going to move the ball all that much. And so I think the Steelers defense is going to be able to hold them to potentially less than 10 points. I mean, Dallas held them to 7. So I think that should be telling. My concern here is the Steelers offense. They are not doing anything right now on the ground. They can't run at all. And James Conner has a quad injury. So we're going to look at another Benny Snell game. And this is an easy run defense. They're not very good, but the Steelers just aren't blocking well. So they're going to have to try to fix that. And then the passing game, they almost exclusively run short passes right now. And I'm assuming Joe Mixon could return was a joke because Zach Taylor has said that every week since like week 6. And every week we keep getting tricked. It's another one of those optimism things. But getting back to the Steelers offense, they just keep settling for these tiny short, like 4 to 6 yard passes. It's kind of like manufacturing a run game, but then they never take any deep shots off of it. And I don't know if that has to do with play calling or if they're not confident that Big Ben can throw the ball downfield consistently and accurately and, with enough velocity anymore to get the job done in that regard. I don't know if it's poor play calling by Tomlin and Randy Fichtner, but they got to try to fix it. And this is their only real chance to do it because the Bengals defense is weak. So I think the Steelers will get right. I do think they have a ton of talent on their team. They just have to fix the coaching aspect of it and fix some of their problems. And I know there are some injuries that they're dealing with, so especially at linebacker, so that's a concern. But if Vince Williams comes off the COVID list, I think they should be just fine, and they should contain the Bengals anyway. So I like the Steelers in this one. I'm not super sold on it, though, because this is a really big line, but I think that they should get right.
Yeah, the Steelers just have such a bad track record of covering these large spreads as road favorites. They've been road favorites of 8 or more 23 times since 1990. Do you want to take a stab at what the record is? So 23 times.
8-15?
4-19.
Oh, my goodness.
It's so bad. I don't know why. They just don't seem to do well in these situations. Now, I think you could be right. Like, this could be a get-right game. The Bengals are absolutely atrocious. They seem to do nothing well. Now, Joe Mixon miraculously comes back, then they can run the ball, I guess. But if not, I don't really see them doing anything at all. They can't block. They can't throw. Well, I mean, they have good receivers, so they can probably take advantage of the Steeler corners. But if they had a good quarterback, but they don't. So they can't throw. They can't block. They can't run. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They can't get to the quarterback. Like, that's about it. And it's like, how does the team like keep this game close? And I mentioned before, like when you have these high lines, like something weird could happen. So like they fumbled the ball 3 times in 3 drives last week. Like maybe the opposite happens. Like maybe instead of a drop, Deontay Johnson fumbles the ball and it's returned for a touchdown. And suddenly the Bengals are up 7-0 and the Steelers have to score 20 points to cover the spread. And, given their offensive struggles, like maybe that doesn't happen because they're dropping a lot of passes and they're kind of sputtering around, and like maybe they win by 10 points. So I could see that situation happening, especially if they have these injuries. I really want to see what the injury report looks like, because it seems like they're very banged up right now. But if they get most of the team back, I think I would consider going with the Steelers, despite that ugly record that I told you about. But if they have a lot of injuries, then I think I'm probably going to just take the points of the Bengals. Either way, I'm almost certainly not going to bet this game.
Yeah, I would only bet this game because it's a standalone on Monday night. And again, I have a tough time resisting those, but I think the injury report's going to matter a ton. And I'm calling Deontay Johnson bricks until he fixes drops issue, because it's been ridiculous just watching him just get a ball directly at him. He's wide open and it's just on the ground. And you're like, how did that happen?
It's a lack of focus. It's not talent or anything. Like, he has great talent. I think he's an amazing player. But yeah, he really needs to start focusing. I don't know what's going on with him. But maybe being benched for about a half, maybe that really did something. So we'll see. So anyway, let's go to our survivor picks. So you can see this here, I got 2 picks wrong. Colts in week 1, and then Minnesota, I believe, in week 11 against Dallas. So if you notice, Tennessee is not on this list, and Tennessee playing the Lions potentially without Stafford, I think that's an easy pick. There are so many easy picks this week, like so many large favorites. If you go down the list, like Packers, Bills, the Rams, I think the Rams are the best play out of everything. If you have every team available, obviously, I think you would take the Rams. The Steelers, we discussed them. You can even say like the Seahawks, they're an option. The Colts, there's so many large favorites. This is an easy week. You shouldn't have any issues trying to find a team.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I have the Rams available because we were aggressively fading them earlier in the season, which turned out to be wrong. But it works in Survivor if you survived past week 1, which I did not. So yeah, if you have the Rams available, take them for sure. But like you said, Walt, there's just so many good teams to pick this week. So just go with the one you're most confident in that isn't some random underdog, and you should be okay.
Yeah. How crazy is it that the week 1 result is going to prevent the Jaguars from getting Trevor Lawrence? They just had to beat the Colts, and now they're going to get Justin Fields is a great consolation prize, but they're not going to get Trevor Lawrence just because they screwed everyone over at Survivor. I guess it's karma, right?
Yeah, I guess that's what happened. Screw me out of my Survivor entry. You don't get Trevor Lawrence. That's how it works.
Yeah, it's punishment. So a teaser real fast. I was looking at this, while we're discussing some of the later games. An obvious play for a teaser is Patriots. Get them from +2.5 up to 8.5. I'm having issues finding another team now. Someone mentioned in the comments Colts down from 7 to 1. I really wanted 7.5. The Colts are 7.5 down to 1.5, and it seems weird to want 1.5 more than 1. But I think you need to get the key numbers, and the fact that the Colts are not -7.5 kind of gives me some pause there. I think there's going to be some other options that appear later in the week, with line moves. So I think that could definitely happen. For example, if the Saints move to +2.5, I would love them at +8.5. But right now I just can't find another team to pair with the Patriots.
Yeah, I'm looking through it too, and I don't see any one that stands out. And even one thing I like to do is if you have a team that you're confident in a double-digit point spread game, just betting that down. But the double-digit point spread, I don't know, you could do the Jaguars +20 with the Patriots, but you're not getting many, if any, key numbers, because I don't know how far the key numbers stretch past 14. But I would consider Patriots and Jaguars, because Jaguars should cover 20 against the Ravens.
Yeah, I want to do a breakdown of that one day, maybe this summer, of the margin, how frequent the margins hit. But yeah, I mean, to me, if the Jaguars cover 14. Like they're I mean, if they cover plus 20, they're probably covering plus 14 anyway. So I don't know about that. So yeah, it's tough. I can't really find a good second option. Speaking of the Jaguars, Andrew says they could get Lawrence if he pulls an Eli Manning. But would Lawrence rather play for Jacksonville than the Jets? I'd rather play for the Jets because you have this marketing opportunity. Like Joe Namath is still selling stuff on TV, even though he's in his 70s. Like even if Trevor Lawrence is half as good as people think he will be, like, he's going to be selling stuff for until he's 70, 80.
Yeah, and I think he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would pull that, like, I don't want to play for you type deal. Like, I don't know. He just seems to be ready to go wherever he ends up. Because if he really didn't want to play for the Jets, his better move, as crazy as this sounds, might have been going back to school, because he's going to be the number one pick no matter what. So he could try to force his hand in a trade, but then all that stuff gets messy. And Joe Douglas might have said he believes in Sam Darnold, but I highly doubt that's true. It's not like he's going to come out and be like, yeah, I don't believe in Sam Darnold anymore, guys, because then, like, that's just going to tank. You could tank the rest of your season, but then you'd have no confidence from the players or the coaches in the GM, and that would just be an untenable situation.
I think that's definitely a ploy to get more value in a trade for Darnold. Like there's no way they're not taking Lawrence. But I think he wants a second-round pick for Darnold, kind of like the Cardinals got for Josh Rosen. And maybe he'll get it. I mean, Darnold has a load of talent, and you could argue that everyone who has left Adam Gase has done better. I mean, look at Ryan Tannehill. If Darnold could play as well as Tannehill, then he can start in the NFL. So anyway, so that is it for this week. Do you have anything to promote?
You can just follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker and follow Sporting News Fantasy at SN_fantasy on Twitter. We got all sorts of fantasy content over at sportingnews.com/fantasy, and I tweet my picks every week. And this week they were actually good, which is good. We had a rough patch in the middle of the season, but we're getting better there. Hopefully we finish strong. And thank you guys all for watching. Follow me and we can talk some football.
Yeah. Once again, please hit subscribe or the like button or comment below. Like all that stuff would be great. Or share this video with someone who likes football but may not know about the channel or the website. That would mean a lot. And it's a great way to help the show. I'm at walterfootball.com. We have tons of content as always throughout the week. Updated 2021 NFL mock draft tomorrow morning, which I'm going to work on tonight. Updated picks against the spread throughout the week, and Saturday notes as usual is going to be the most important thing. And then Charlie Campbell is doing some great work with the draft. Updated big board, stock reports, previews for the games coming up. It's going to be bowl season, so it's coming up. The NFL draft season is 3.5 weeks away, so we're getting there. So anyway, that is it for this week. I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.